Hi, everybody. Well, we've been going, this is our fifth week, I think, and see if we have any questions at all. Cami, you got a question?
Yeah, I raised my hand. Yes, I have a question. I've I've been rereading the three pillars, and I think sometime last week I got to the part where the Roshi was interviewing all the students about their they have questions about their sitting and their koans and that. And I don't know, I guess I was impressed by a lot of times how the determination and effort was stressed in regards to how you approach your sitting and how you approach your practice. And I was kind of thinking and contrasting it to sometimes today different teachers are a lot more gentle. Like, say there's this sitting group I go to in town, and I think the people that lead it are Vipassana, but it's all very gentle and just let everything, don't critique or you're sitting and and I understand that, obviously you don't want to beat yourself up if you're constantly thinking and all that type of thing. However, there is something to being able to have some effort in focusing and learning to focus and concentrate. And I don't know, I remember, and this is what one of the things I wanted to ask you, I'm not sure where I got it from, but when I first started at the Zen Center, I don't know if it was a Roshi talk or somebody else, but I remember some instruction about sitting with such awareness that it was like somebody was over your head with a sword, that if you wavered off, that sword would come down. And that was actually fairly successful for me. If I thought if I was going to waver off, a sword was going to come down. I mean, it kind of did help me focus until it wasn't so much of an effort where I could do it naturally. And I just wondered if you could say something about that. Like, have you noticed a shift? Maybe it's not so much in Zen, maybe it's in other forms of meditation, but a shift towards being more like gentle with people. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but on the other hand, it kind of undermines, in my opinion, maybe undermines them to have faith and confidence in themselves, that they can maybe effort more towards concentration. I don't know. Anyway, I'll stop and see what you have to say about that.
Yeah. Well, it's a very interesting question. I mean, through the history of Zen, there's been, obviously we know the stories of people getting whacked with sticks and having their noses pinched and, being yelled at and, all that kind of thing. And I remember, when I first met Genpo Roshi, I was, I had done some practice in Tibetan tradition, which is very gentle that way. And but when I first showed up there, I think it was 1996 or 7. One of the things that impressed me was how austere it was, how it was all monks, they're all in their robes, and nobody, it's all silence, everybody's very stern looking and serious looking. And for me, I went, oh, this is the real deal. And so for me at the time, it was like, it did give me some sort of confidence that these people were on the right track and that I should, take this path. And it was different than many of the places I had visited. I was fortunate enough back in those days, my job allowed me to fly all over the West Coast and even back east. But so I was able to visit a lot of different Zen centers and Tibetan centers, in my travels. In the evenings, I'd go for talks or sitting or whatever. And there were a number of different styles. And then, Roshi has definitely evolved over the years that way. And now, I mean, he's like sit whatever way you want, whenever you want, don't worry about it, and so he's very soft and loose about that now. Although I know that he feels that you must have a practice, whether it's harsh or disciplined, or or whether it's more loose and that way. So uh I think that uh well, let me just say one other thing. I know that all the Zen and meditation centers around the country, you know, they're all trying to find ways to work with people and to help people and to keep their members going. And some of them have definitely moved into more of the heart area, you might say, which is a little more gentle. And some, I know, like Upaya Zen Center, they have all sorts of programs for all these various different social justice causes and things like that. And they keep their members involved that way as well, which isn't strictly a practice, although, if you're out doing good, that's a good thing. But as far as, individual, what you should do for yourself, that is really only for you to decide. And if you feel like your practice is maybe a little sloppy, or, you're not really, focusing the way you should, then just the awareness of that, you know how to tighten it up for yourself. And if you feel like you're just like hammering away too hard, you should recognize that too, and just, make those kinds of adjustments. It's the posture is the same way, just even the physical posture, you have to make little adjustments along the way. So I guess my answer in a way is that you're the one that's in charge, and you have to kind of do it for yourself. And um I wouldn't judge it so much as just to observe it and do what's useful. Don't do what you think you should do, but do what's really truly useful for your practice and your realization. I was going to talk a little bit in a little while about just a little bit about the Eightfold Path and kind of that idea about some of that. So
I mean, maybe some of it, do you think some of it comes down to what's the reason, like those 5 reasons for sitting, what's your, if it's just to feel better, then gentle probably is fine. And, maybe if you have different aspirations, maybe that's the time where, and, I've seen Roshi, I mean, he'll hone in on a person depending where they're at. I mean, I've seen him be tough on people and then very gentle with people. So I think, I guess, like you're saying, it's an individual thing. I guess that's what it boils down to, like you said.
yeah,
Yeah.
it does. It boils down to really self-awareness of your practice. And it does depend on, how long you've been at it and what you start to identify the areas you need to work on. One of the things, kind of a sports analogy is the coaches always say, work on your weaknesses. Don't just work on your strengths, Like if you're really good dribbling a basketball with your right hand, but not so good with your left hand, then practice your left hand. And same in soccer with one foot or the other. And, it's be honest with yourself about your weaknesses and address those, and be happy that for your strengths,
Right.
But, Roshi, I mean, he's so brilliant. He has been working with people for so many years that he can just tell from the question and the sort of the flavor of the question and the body language. And, he can kind of tell, I think, pretty accurately, 99% of the time, kind of what that person needs from him. And he oftentimes delivers it right on the mark. And sometimes it's a bit of a shock for the rest of us, watching on Zoom or live, to go, wow, I hope he doesn't, turn that onto me. Right. Or we might think, oh, wow, he should have been harder on that person, but that's our judgment. Those are our dualistic projections and judgments about everybody else. And of course, that's what we're trying to get away from, actually. And to just focus on our own practice and know ourselves well. And by doing that, I think we become much more sensitive to others and much more receptive to what the situations we're in and where people are coming from, not in a judgmental way, but just in a compassionate way, really, to be open and say or do the right thing in that moment.
Yeah.
He was talking the other day about doing when you do big mind to to be so open that you're you're not trying to give people an answer or trying to steer them to an answer, right? Same kind of thing. Thank you, Cami. Buddhism, as we all know, is very much concerned with the mind. And that's because that's where the suffering happens, right? And this was the Buddha's mission, was to address the causes and conditions of suffering, and how we do that. And so his teachings from the very start were concerned about things that occur in the mind. And there's so many analogies for what is mind, right? I mean, that's a great kind of meditation question. What is mind? And along with who am I and things like that. But the Tibetans and others have some very nice kind of ways to illustrate that. And that the mind is like a open sky. It's completely open and clear, and all your thoughts and everything else that's going on are just clouds floating through. They come in, they're constantly changing, and they finally go away. And you are not the clouds. Those are just your thoughts and feelings and maybe opinions and all those kinds of things. And yet mind can contain it all, and does contain it all. And so it's an interesting way to kind of look at it. I think I said a couple of weeks ago, just even in the material world, we can see that the cosmos, the earth, everything in it, is a non-dual thing. There's no labels, there's no judgments that come. Saturn was never named Saturn until, I guess, the Greeks named it Saturn after one of their gods. Earth was, I mean, these are all human constructs. And so as soon as we construct something, we see an object, a car, a person, whatever, ourselves, we start to construct an idea, notions and opinions and judgments about that thing. And that, because of the nature of dualistic thinking that way, that's naturally just sets up an inner conflict, because all those judgments may seem very correct and true to you, and we even pat ourselves in the back for how much we think we know about everything. But the next person over, the next person in the window here may have completely different ideas and thoughts and views about all of that. And so who's right? And if you get into a tangle with somebody over politics or religion or whatever, or who took your parking spot even, this is all the source of suffering. So our practice in meditation and other practices that we do is to, recognize this, and instead of we don't try to push the clouds away. We don't try to clear the sky all the time or keep the clouds out. We just can sit back and sit as mind. Sit as mind and let these things just come and go, because they're all part of the apparent reality. And we can appreciate them and the beauty, and we can see the, whatever is going on there, and not cling to it, not attach to it. Like I say, oh, I want to keep that cloud here forever, right? Because I really like that cloud, and identify that cloud is me, So in our meditation, we try to loosen up our tendencies to cling and attach to things, either to hold them in or to push them away. It's always one or the other, right? And so when the Buddha first had his enlightenment, he had some buddies out there with him, fellow seekers of the way, and they noticed what had happened with him and said, you have to tell us, what's going on. What did you find out? What did you see? What is all that? Because they tried all these different practices. And so he first came out with the Four Noble Truths, which is, there's different translations, but basically life includes this kind of suffering, and the cause of it is clinging to dualistic thinking, and everything is because of causes and conditions, and there's a way out of it, and the way is the Eightfold Path. And so the Eightfold Path, I think, they say it was his first sermon, and I think what he was trying to do there was lay out not what he had seen, but a path to help people see what he had seen. And this kind of goes to your question, Cami, about, should I go gentle or harsh, and that kind of thing. And I think some of the misunderstandings about the Eightfold Path is the word right, because each one starts out, right view, right thought, right speech, right action, all that. And I think a better way to look at it is not necessarily right as in right and wrong, but more, is this useful on the path or not useful? Okay, on your path to realization. So the first one, right view, or they also say right understanding, but we can also mix that up with knowing, right? But right realization, you might say, or useful realization. It's a very hard to use words to even get into this, but many times people think, well, they come at this, of course we all do, from our dualistic sort of tendency, and we think, well, what is right thought? I can't have wrong thoughts, but and in the Theravadan tradition and the Mahayana and stuff, they have different ways of approaching this, but these things are all things that that he laid out for people to at least start to work on. Because if you lead a very messy life, if we kind of know when we're having unuseful thoughts, unuseful speech, unuseful actions, right? We know. And sometimes we don't care. Sometimes we're angry. Sometimes we're greedy. Sometimes we're ignorant, right? Greed, anger, and ignorance. And these things lead to, all these things have karmic consequences, and for ourselves and for others. And so what he was trying to do, and the reason they called it a path, is because, start here, start cleaning these things up, start straightening out your life, and have some self-awareness about what you're thinking and how you see the world and how you speak to others. do you disparage others? Are you mean? Or do you gossip? All these things have harmful effects, and these things stand in the way of realization. And like Cami said, one of the first things that people start with meditation or start on this path is, well, I want to be a better person. I want to improve my life. And so this is very much directed at people starting out. And okay, if you want to be a better person and all that, we'll get to the more esoteric stuff later. But if right away you just want to make your life better, then start being self-aware of your speech and your actions, your thoughts. And then there's also right mindfulness and right concentration. Well, it's not like we talked about, should we be gentle or should we be hard on ourselves about our meditation practice? And so saying right there also can be a little misleading. Is it useful? Is it working? Is it getting you where you should go? And so staying on that path starts with judging yourself, I guess, or at least being self-aware, and then moving forward from there. And it seems like a lot. There's 8 of them, and they're happening all day long, right? You're talking all day, you're thinking all day, you're taking action, and you don't want to get paralyzed by this either. But it's or have your self-critic come in very, very strongly and tell you, I'll never make it, or this is, I'm just not worthy, or I can never do it. So in a way, the gentleness side is there, in that just recognize you're starting out, and there's a lot of things to think about and look at, but just kind of keep at it. So here comes the discipline part of it, and right effort of just kind of like staying with it and getting over the hurdles, and slowly but surely, you will start to experience a smoother life, smoother relationships. But it doesn't happen overnight, and it takes a steady effort and a steady determination. This kind of relates to the 6 paramitas as well. They're kind of, in a way, the same kind of thing. They're saying, the perfection of these things, the perfection of generosity, the perfection of self-discipline. And so discipline can be, for example, the discipline of just going and doing your sitting on a schedule, or being diligent about that. But it can also be self-discipline in terms of denying yourself things that aren't useful. Okay, it's sort of a willpower of saying, okay, I'm going to stop drinking too much, and or I'm going to stop whatever sort of bad habit, or I'm going to at least be aware of it and start to work on that. Or one of the paramitas is about patience. How patient are we in life with others and with ourselves? We have to be patient with ourselves as well, and there's a gentleness involved in that, but also a kind of effort and discipline. So they all tie in together. Each one feeds the other. This is also true with the Eightfold Path. I know it's it's pointed out that it's not like a step-by-step program. You have to do them all at once. Okay, even though they're listed 1 through 8, you don't start with number 1 and get that one mastered and then go to number 2 and then number 3. Right? It's a holistic approach, and probably more holistic than anything else. All right. So I'll stop rambling for a minute and let you guys ask any questions. I'll take a sip of coffee. My Christmas cup. Maria?
Yeah, I ask the same question, Roshi. When I'm sharing Dharma, sometimes people ask me how to sit and so on, which kind of instruction I have to give, because I made this experience that the people get lost when the instruction is too gentle. They need at the beginning some very strict instruction, like it is in the book, yeah, how to sit, how to breathe, and this gentleness, we can use this gentleness when the people are very stressed. So just we can tell them, oh yeah, don't stress yourself, it's okay. But the first instruction, I think, should be clear and strict.
Yeah, well, hard to answer in a way, because depending on who's asking and who's answering,
Yes, exactly. That's
right?
that's the point.
I Roshi corrected me on this once years ago, and I tried to hold to it. He said, don't say should. Don't tell somebody, well, you should do this and you should do that and like that. And it took me a while to actually get that, but now I say, this is what works for me. This is what I do. And I know there's others that do this a little different, and I can tell you about how people do it a little different. I mean, it's something as simple as how to meditate is not so simple. And we have basic instructions, just like in the 3 pillars, about things like the posture, how you hold yourself, and how how you should breathe, and then what to do with when your mind is racing or whatever. And I read once, I'm not sure where I read it, but the person who was speaking said, for most of us starting out in Zen, and even a ways into it, Buddhism and Zen seems like a vast wilderness that is an almost impenetrable kind of forest. And partly that's because of the difficulty of using language even to talk about something that's really based on direct experience. But some instruction is required, but a guide, I think, is essential. Not that people haven't done it on their own, but even the Buddha went around to a number of different teachers and tried all sorts of different things. So, but if it's just somebody coming up to me and saying, gosh, I've always been interested. This just happened yesterday, actually. This couple that are friends of ours said, we've always kind of been interested in Buddhism, and we know you guys are Buddhists, and what can you tell me about it? And so we talked a little bit about it, and I could tell how quickly they were not getting what I was saying, even, and because I didn't know hardly where to start. And so I talked about dualistic thinking, and this is like a brand new concept. I mean, many people never even thought of it that way, that what is dual and what's non-dual, what the hell, and it's kind of a bit unsettling and maybe intimidating to think about. And it was a nice conversation, and I'll probably talk to them more about it. But yeah, Mark, do you help me out with this one? What do you do? What do you say?
Yeah.
It's tricky. As you've been saying, in several different contexts, it really depends on the person. and it really depends on, our own awareness of where they're at and what they're asking for. And that's what I'm sure you were feeling too. It certainly happens often enough after you've been in this practice for a while. And I really think that I try to, as I'm sure you do, try to sense where they're coming from. I mean, it can be anything from kind of intellectual curiosity, or comparing what they know with what you might tell them, kind of checking on you. But it can also come from, a much more, I would say, serious or sincere searching, and that, so I try, as I'm sure you do, to adjust to where that's coming from. But sometimes, there are people who, it happens not so infrequently, someone will call on the phone whom I can't even see, and they're saying, well, what's going on at your place, or what do you recommend? And then, there's no, if I'm saying, when it's coming from some kind of urgency, there's no one right answer. But I think, what I sense in those cases is that people are looking for something, that's very important to them, and that they're coming from some kind of suffering, if you want to call it that, and recognizing that, like the person who's talking to me and myself, some dissatisfaction, some suffering, and some idea that there's a better way, or there would be something that would really would satisfy them. To talk about, that's where we all start, and that is, the gateway to realizing what this practice or what Buddhism is about. And you can talk about how that's where the Buddha started, and what he realized was that what we are seeking is what we already have. And how can we resolve that paradox? And how can it be, instead of sounding like something that's so, as you say, so esoteric or so remote, to say that it's possible to see what the essence of Buddhism is without a lot of preparation, without a lot of instruction, and without a lot of kind of intellectual approach. And that can work, I mean, I have, occasionally, started right out with big mind. So, who's, the thing I talked about the other day, I don't think it was with this group, but, taking where the person is coming from, that seeking, and then asking them to look at that activity that they're engaged in, and why they're doing it, and what it means to them, and then offering them the opportunity to drop that state of mind, and what would occur then. It's so, obviously it depends on the person, but there are we have a lot of tools. You don't have to know that much about Buddhism to realize that what people are seeking, even if you're not feeling like, or not feeling that you should be a teacher, or that you are a teacher, or that you need to be a teacher. But I think if people realize, depending again on the person, that it's not something so alien and so esoteric, that's what I try to offer, that there is something that is much closer to home than some abstract Eastern religion or spirituality or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good, Mark. Of course, the Dana Paramita, the first Paramita, one of the things they say is do not be stingy with the Dharma. So sometimes, you know, somebody asks you about it, you got to kind of go ahead and give it a shot, right? And in doing that, it can actually clarify your own practice quite a bit, because you're all of a sudden you're in the spotlight and you're like, wow, what is my understanding? You know, what is it? You know, but you know, it's funny because this goes to how everybody's different. I have a guy I work with who's a Marine veteran, who had some horrible experiences, and he's like a really great guy, but he's really troubled with PTSD and stuff like that. And when we talk, it's pretty rough, you know. He's like he's really smart. He's got a mathematics degree from a major university, and he's very heady that way. And you know, but it's kind of rough, because he'll be like, so what the hell, you know? And I'll go, well, what's your fucking problem, you know? And this is how we work together, right? Because this is how he can open up. He kind of like, you know, he's really hard on himself, you know, but he sort of needs that to break through these things. And we've developed this kind of relationship with him, like I would never do with anyone else, you know. But once I got to know him, and we kind of got through the initial sort of feeling each other out and talking about, you know, the basics of Buddhism and stuff like that, it finally got to, you know, what is your problem? What are we working on here? You know, what are you working on, and how can I help? And then we started doing Big Mind together, and it worked really, really well, because he was very open. He was very much a beginner's mind. You know, he was very sincere and genuine in wanting to get to the bottom of what he was suffering with, because it was pretty intense for him. So, you know, people who are sort of mildly interested, you know, they just want to hear a quick thing and go, okay, well, that's kind of what I thought it was, and you know, whatever. But anyway, Meg's got her hand up. What's happening, Meg?
You know, I'm sort of going back to something you said, that, you know, people who are beginning are seeking maybe to be a nicer person. But, you know, I did a lot of Zen practice where I wanted, quote unquote, enlightenment, whatever that meant. But I had this sort of image, right, of the big thing that was good. And actually, at the end of like the 3 pillars of Zen, there are all these enlightenment stories, right? Where it's like, okay, this thing crashes down on you and that's what I want. But now I'm back to just wanting to be a nicer person, which, you know, for me seems to be wearing life more loosely, which is where this comes in. But I don't want anything big, right? I mean, there is a very, I feel like my seeking goes only so far at this point. I don't want this big change. I just want to live my life better. And I judge, right? Because I think niceness, kindness, compassion are living my life better. You know, I'm not so into the wisdom side of things. Manjushri is fine, but you know, it's Kanzeon that I want.
Yeah. I think that's great, Meg. And of course, we've known each other a long time, and you know, we all go through these phases and stages and levels, and we plateau for a while, and you know, and I think, like Mark said just a few minutes ago, ultimately, there's nothing to get other than this is your life, and live your life, and be aware of what's going on, and you know, act accordingly. Try not to create a lot of waves. You know?
Yeah, it's sort of getting my karma in line, right, is a lot of it, which is kindness and compassion to me. But you know, there's this thing, Buji Zen, which I don't really think about except when someone mentions it, and then I'm like, ooh, I'm classic Buji Zen, right? Because whatever it is, that's the end point, I don't really care about anymore.
Yeah, well,
Can you talk a little bit about Buji Zen? Would you mind just a couple minutes about it to sort of clarify a little bit?
I might have to defer on that a bit. My understanding is that it's like it's like practice to get something. Would you say that?
Exactly.
You know, I have to tell you, my first exposure to Buddhism, honestly, was when I was 14 years old. And when was that? Like 1964 or something. And there was a new kid in the new family in the neighborhood, and they were Japanese. And he was a nice kid, and we became friends, and he invited me down to their house, and which was all like really Japanese inside, and everything was like rice and, you know, and then when we had dinner and stuff, and so food I wasn't really used to. But she was a practitioner of what was called Nichiren Shoshu at the time,
Right.
and had a group there that would come, and so I went to their group a few times, and you know, they have a little altar with they call it a gohanzen, right, a scroll in there. I think it's the Heart Sutra, but I'm not sure on that. But at any rate, their practice is to chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo,
Right.
and their pitch to me and others was just chant and chant, you know, just chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, and think about the things you want, and these things will come forth. You know, you'll get that car, you'll get that job, you'll get that, you know, respect, whatever it is. And you know, I did that for quite a while with them, like maybe a year, every once a week. And you know, it was like the beginning of the very beginning of the kind of hippie era, and I was starting to first have thoughts about things, you know, mystical and stuff like that. And it was interesting, but I really liked the chanting, actually. And but I'll tell you what happened. They said, well, we're having a big convention. I was living in Seattle, and the convention was in Tacoma, and so we went down there. I went with them, and all the Nichiren Shoshu people from all over the Northwest had all gathered there, and it was really, you know, very Japanese. Like everybody was kind of in uniforms, and they had flags and bandanas around their head, and they were shouting and marching and hitting bells, and it kind of freaked me out, right? I didn't go back after that, because I just thought, whoa, what am I getting into here? I enjoyed the chanting, and I enjoyed their family and that kind of thing. But anyway, you know what? I still have my gohanzen after all these years, tucked away. But I don't know, you know, there's so many, but to me, that's a kind of Buji Zen, right? Or Buji Buddhism, you might say. And I don't think it's all bad, because you got to start somewhere. And it's very, very natural for people to, you know, want to get things, right? I mean, we want to get things all the time, you know, and we want to not get things that we don't want, of course. And you know, so if that's a way to kind of get you exposed, and the chanting, I have to say, and this was true in Tibetan practice that I did, chanting is a very interesting meditative kind of thing, practice. I enjoy it, actually. It does put you in a place where, you know, you don't have any other, there's no other thoughts going on in your mind. It's just the chant and you don't even know what you're saying, you know. I don't know what the words mean or anything. It's just this kind of rolling thing. But there's a, what is it? There's 10,000 doors to the Dharma, right? And so I don't think it's necessarily bad. I think it's bad if, you know, or shouldn't even say bad. I think it's not useful if you never kind of get beyond that. But I think, you know, any of these practices, you know, you are going to go through stages, and there will be a stage where you do get beyond it, and or hopefully, right? So I don't really want to knock it necessarily. I think, like Roshi says all the time, just don't get stuck. Just don't stick to things, you know? Mark?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, you know, I think that's probably as good a definition, Buchi Zen, wanting something for yourself. But it's also not such a, from the point of view of Zen, it's not so disparaged. I mean, we talk about the 5 stages, Tozan's 5 ranks, and the first is wanting to improve one's life or wanting to understand. And even the 5 stages are not seen, I think, it's incorrect to think of them as kind of steps on a ladder and you pass one and you're through with it and you move on. Genpo Roshi often says, we go through all these, any one step can include all the other 4 as well. So it's not like we're so limited or that those phases are so contradictory to each other. Also, I just wanted to mention the sutra that they chant in that Myoho Renge, that's the Lotus Sutra.
Oh, the Lotus.
Yeah, and it's a very, very long sutra, and but it is much more kind of esoteric and devotional than, for example, the Heart Sutra. But that Buchi Zen, yeah, it does seem like it's a kind of a insult, and I'm sure it's meant that way from certain perspectives, but I don't think it's seen that way in all fairness. And also, it comes back to what Cami asked right at the beginning, about what's the correct approach, what's the way to engage one's own interests, and should it be more harsh, or maybe not even harsh, but more focused in some way, and different sects and different, even within Zen. And, as we know, even with Genpo Roshi, his own approach has evolved or changed. And I think certain things, as Bruce is suggesting too, that, at certain ages in our life, certain level, certain, period of whatever you want to call it, maturity or single-mindedness, certain approaches work better than others. And, sometimes we really want that kind of push and that kind of, if you can call it discipline and so on. But there's room for different approaches. And I think even within our Sangha, there are people who, just are never going to respond to that kind of harshness or straightforwardness or single-mindedness. And I think what's appropriate is, depending on the person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, both of you.
A vast wilderness. Cami.
I'm not sure if this is relates to Buchi Zen or not, or if I'm even remembering it right, but I think I've heard teachers talk in the past about way back, at the start of Buddhism with in the monasteries, and that the townspeople would kind of relinquish that type of energy to the monks and support the monks by providing food and whatever support they could, because they had to go about their business and their life and the taking care of their farms, and so they kind of turned over the focus for enlightenment and being a bodhisattva and that to the monks, and kind of out of practicality in a way. I don't know. Does that sound familiar, or did I make that up?
Yeah, no, it's true. And, of course, you have to remember the entire culture, for thousands of years, before Buddhism was one of, getting merit, through your actions and your donations and your, supporting the monks, gave you sort of karmic merit as well. So that was kind of how they, if they had to just like work really hard in the fields all the time, they would maybe send their kids or one of their kids off to the monastery also, because the monasteries also served as the school, and sometime in Tibet, the government, everything was around the monasteries, but somebody has to go herd the sheep and do all that, and so it was a very much symbiotic kind of relationship. I think it's different here in the West that way. I don't think people look at Genpo Roshi, for example, and say, well, I need to provide him things so I can get my merit. I don't think that's the motivation there. But we all understand that we all have to make money, and we have to pay for our stuff we do, our rent and our food and our computers and everything, and like that. But this goes back to that. And I told Mark I promised not to give away any clone answers today. But the very famous one of Bodhidharma coming before, I think, Emperor Wu, and Emperor Wu says, what merit do I get from supporting, building all these monasteries and supporting all these monks in my kingdom and everything, which he had all sorts of different motivations for that. But one, of course, was that he didn't really need to practice, but he would go to some Buddhist heaven because he had done all these things. And of course, Bodhidharma shut him down and said no merit, which was probably a pretty rude awakening for an emperor to have somebody say that to them. But and we live. I mean, our culture now is here in America and in Europe is so much different on so many levels than. Of course, those ancient cultures in India and China, but even the modern cultures, the foundations around even the way people think about things is I think markedly different. So we have to find our way here, and I think that this is why every Zen center you go to, every Vipassana center, every Tibetan center, Tibetans are pretty consistent about what they do, but the Zen people have been more branching out into all sorts of different ways to kind of reach new people and sustain the people they have, and different teachers. Of course, they came from different teaching backgrounds themselves, but we're in like third and fourth generation of American Zen people now, and it's naturally going to morph. And we, out of compassion or out of just survival, if you're running a Zen center somewhere, you've got to pay the bills and you've got to help people at the same time, and it's a struggle, and there's a lot of different approaches out there. I think I mentioned Upaya. My wife just finished a 2-year Buddhist chaplaincy program through Upaya Zen Center. And, did we ever think of running a chaplaincy program at Kansan? No, I don't think so, but people and a lot of social action stuff. I know Bernie Glassman Roshi, was very much into, he had the bakery and he had his tie-ins with the Ben and Jerry's ice cream, and they had all sorts of programs for homeless and, all those kinds of things, which is, good action in the world and good for them, and it's great. Not everybody can do that. He was a great organizer and a great, very charismatic kind of person that could pull that together. Genpo Roshi, I got to tell you, his number one goal is to enlighten all of you and all of us. I mean, he kind of doesn't really care a whole lot about any of it, except for just getting you to see into your own true nature. And I think it's a wonderful mission that he's been on for all these years, and the results to me are obvious. I've been around so many of the students, and he's produced some great other teachers that are all around carrying things on, and You know, so that's what we do. And I guess, you know, part of our personal practice is what am I doing to carry on? You know, and can I and will I and how do I deepen my practice? Genpo Roshi also pointed out the other day, because we've got this class coming up, how to share a big mind. And then it's a a weekend thing. And then we've got our facilitator training coming up. And so some questions have been coming up about that. And he's clear to point out, I mean, even, to me, even when I proposed to him that I would do this intro to Zen class, he said, yeah, well, you can only teach to your level. Okay. So he's kind of like, don't get too carried away. But it's true with doing big mind as well. Like, if you're not, if you don't really have your own stuff together pretty well, you got to be a little careful about what kind of ideas you're putting in other people's heads. Okay. And so it's even more important to really work on your own practice, and that's how you're going to do the best for everybody else and yourself. So, how's your practice going? Paul, I'm going to call on you just because you're smiling.
Hello, good to see you. I'm working also on the physical aspect. So yeah, I've been working a lot on the mind and what's going on in the mind. But I notice, and also because of Genpo Roshi, I think that my ego, or how you call it, is also, yeah, I think energy is built up because of past conditionings and like thorns, which you can't pull out, but yeah, you just can be aware of them, I think, and make them visible, and that's it. And sometimes they transform, and sometimes they don't. And that's so. Also, just with physical sitting,
Mhm.
and it's been an avenue for me, especially in the pelvis area, where I'm making all kinds of discoveries and near the sitting bones, and for a man near the prostate, and it's yeah. It's kind of magic, actually.
Yeah.
So that's a new territory for me.
Yeah. Everything is new territory all the time, isn't it?
Absolutely, just don't get stuck. Yeah, so moving on.
Don't get stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's so much fun and so interesting to learn about the world, just about the physical world and about your work and all those kinds of things. And it's,
Yeah.
there's so much to be so grateful for, and it's also part of your practice, right? It's just to be constantly
Yep.
curious. And
What I also like is, well, I read Genpo's blog from the 22nd of December on pain and suffering, and I really like that one, and especially where he took the shortcut about forget about the Eightfold Path, just go, don't make a distance, and become one with it. So you're talking now about the Eightfold Path, and I thought, yeah, it's important. And then here he comes, he pulls that rug underneath you, and then yeah, skip it. And of course, it's a lot of nuances there, but yeah. And I like your saying about in the beginning, it makes you really self-conscious. I found, am I doing the right? Well, am I talking the right words? Am I doing the right actions? Am I? So it confronted me very much with, well, with my ego. actually.
Yeah.
And then fighting going on, and what's right, and what do you mean? So for me, the Eightfold Path is also discovering yourself. And in the end, someone asked me, what's for you the essential of sitting? And in the end, it's, I think, being at peace with oneself, with myself, and using the Eightfold Path for that, and using the paramitas for that, and but being free in that prison of life.
Yeah, and especially when you realize it's a self-imposed prison.
Absolutely.
But you know, it's the another thing Roshi said, you know, it's the life of something is in the question, not in the answer.
Yeah.
And so what is, you know, what is the voice of the question? Not the content of the question, but what is that feeling of wondering or questioning? What, that's an interesting voice to sit in, I think. Maybe we all do that right now. May I speak to the voice of, let's call it wondering or questioning? Okay, so you are.
The voice of wondering, questioning.
Okay. What's the feeling of this voice?
It's spacious, and it's openness, and not stuck. But at the same time, also that other voice saying, hey, do something useful.
Uh-huh. Anybody can answer, by the way. You guys can all unmute and just take turns or whatever. So if you go down, like you go down in your stomach, you know, what does that feel like in there? When there's a question, you have a question and you haven't had the answer yet.
My stomach, it's spacious. If I take it to my heart, rest area, it's contraction. Depending on where I'm putting the question.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, because questions have come kind of out of a different place.
Yeah. My belly, it's open. No answer, doesn't. If it comes, it's all right. If it doesn't, it's okay.
Cami?
Yeah, as the one wondering or questioning, another description that comes up for me is like, it's like I'm curiosity. It's like an open curiosity into what I don't know. I mean, it's like open, it's like beginner's mind. I'm wondering and I'm questioning, but I don't know. And I'm open to see what of the myriad possibilities could come from it. And yeah, So it's kind of tied in with curiosity and beginner's mind and openness and not knowing.
Okay, let me shift this voice for a second. Let me speak to the urge to know.
Are you talking to me now? You want me to do that?
Everybody. Let me speak to the urge to know. This goes a little deeper than just the question. So what does it feel? What does that urge to know feel like?
Well, since I'm still on,
Yeah.
I think I am, yeah. Yeah, it's different. It did shift. I wouldn't say it's deeper for me.
Okay.
This is almost like this need to know somehow is going to solidify my understanding, like if I could know, then it would become more contained, and it's almost like it's like the opposite of being open and being able to, so yeah, I want to make something concrete. I want to make something graspable. That's what comes up.
Yeah, yeah, the urge. Colleen.
There's a sense of urgency and anxiety, like there's something to get and I didn't get it. Where is it? I need to get it. Very uncomfortable compared to the voice of questioning, which was spacious and even youthful, like, I don't know. All the time in the world. To just be with, wow.
Yeah, it is different, isn't it? The urge to know. Max.
It feels the same when we were the seeking mind. It feels just the same. It's no ease.
Physically, how does it feel? Can you describe it?
It's a bit stressful, a bit, I don't know, some sort of busyness. I mean, well, not at ease.
Yeah, unresolved, kind of. Okay, Meg. Thanks, Max.
Yeah, what Paul said really spoke to me because these two voices, right, the wondering, the curiosity, and the wanting to know sort of alternate, right? So there is that belly spaciousness, which actually is a whole body spaciousness on some level, but it's like the energy goes up and it hits contraction, and the contraction is wanting to know or wanting to get, right? Like the wondering is not just curiosity, but wondering is about something, is about an end point. So that's that movement upwards of energy to me was spaciousness and then contraction. And I think it was the alternation of those two voices.
Yeah, I get that. Thanks, Meg. Madhushri.
Yeah, I could feel the urge to know was deeper than the other. And to me, it was just on the other side of being present. The urge to know comes from not being fully in my body, I felt.
Interesting. Yeah.
Mm.
Right. I think, you know, another name for this one Mark uses all the time is the one who needs to know. I said the urge to know, because I was like, in myself, I feel it as a, you know, just like a tightening, like, you know, I want to solve this. I want to find something that I can cling to, because it's kind of uncomfortable to not know. Or is it? Yeah. How often how often are you involved in her or his life as the urge to know? Paul,
Well, it's my job. That's what I do for a living.
right?
I mean, I'm a consultant. I need to know. A question is asked, and they expect answers, and also within a given time frame. So that's that's the agreement. That's the contract. I need to know.
So the second he latches onto something he knows, you're gone at that point, right? You're just done till the next
He ne-
urge.
Yeah, but that's constantly coming, because after one, then it's my job.
There's another, right?
There's another. There's always something to know.
Never
The
ending.
urge. Absolutely not. I'm always busy.
So it kind of tightened up all the time, huh?
Yeah, that's not a problem. That's my job.
Yeah, that's your job. No, I get it. Maria?
Yeah, she wants to know because she's seeking security. She thinks when she knows everything will be okay, but it's not me.
Yeah, you know that's a delusion on her part, right?
Yeah, she's a kind of stressing me. It is not my job just to give her security. Yeah. And she's doing this all the time. Yeah, just asking me how is this, how is that, how it will be in the future, like a child. Yeah.
You need to know. You
Yeah.
want to know. You are driven to know, right? As the urge to know,
Yeah.
or the one who needs to know. Yeah.
I wish she used me for searching for enlightenment or these things make more sense.
Kind of a life force, would you say?
Yes, yes, it is a force. Yeah, that's true. A strong one. Mm. I wonder how strong it is in my life, especially. Yeah.
I think it's good just to feel it, you know, like this. Feel how powerful this voice is in the body. And of course, we know body mind's connected, so it's connected that way as well. Is it hard for he or she to relax when you're on the job?
Sure, it is for sure hard to relax. Yeah. Without security and not knowing. Yeah.
And yet, you know, when an answer is found, you just go after something else, right?
That's true. We have another problem.
Yeah. Okay, let's speak to, I'm trying to think here. Well, let's just speak to the opposite of the urge to know. Okay, so just take a moment and you're the opposite of the urge or the need to know. Just sit with that for a minute. What's the general feeling as this voice? Colleen?
A sense of groundedness and pretty chill, just present. It's all good.
Grounded and chill. I love that. It's a great feeling. Anybody else? Paul?
It feels really free and peace and flowing and essence and moving freely.
And yeah, you're free because you don't need to know, but it probably also feels quite free to Paul. Would you say? When you're present?
He's happy at the moment.
Yeah. From this voice, can you see how Paul feels when he gets answers? Does that feel like you do now?
Now the answer is like when he's getting a new iPhone 14, and that's momentarily a sense of happiness, and this is far more, connection or grounded is the word I had before.
Yeah,
It's free flowing. It's open. It's
because when you get a new iPhone, it does feel, you have an answer, but then all of a sudden it's like, how do I work this thing?
yeah. And then
So
it
the
breaks.
answers,
Yeah.
having the answers don't really give Paul the same feeling as you, of the one who doesn't need to know, or the opposite of needing to know, right?
No, completely different.
How interesting is that?
Yeah. How interesting. Yeah. Complete relaxation.
Yeah.
Paul likes that.
So does Bruce.
Just can sit here, don't do anything.
Yeah.
No urge.
And he doesn't need you to be around all the time, because there's times when Paul does need to know stuff or figure stuff out, right? But maybe sure be nice to have him around have you around a little bit more. Or
I
not.
think I also can help him as a consultant
Oh, okay.
in
And
this
how's
space.
that?
I can provide him with creativity.
Right. Right, because you don't limit him in any way, do you?
No, and it might pop up, and it might not.
Right.
There's no urge. I'm there every day
Very
of his life.
Enjoying this myself. So I think what we're seeing right now is what Mark said a little while ago, and Roshi said oftentimes, there's really nothing to get because this is always there. And all the answers and all, to all the questions don't really get you to this place. They're interesting and they're not wrong or bad, but really the direct experience of this not needing to know really offers the kind of, groundedness and chillness, like Colleen said, that is so nice, and it's always there. You just need to call it up. And you can do it in your meditation, or you can just whenever, right? It's always available. So you can throw away all your Zen books, you can throw away the 3 pillars, the Eightfold Path, right? Because actually from this place, you're probably going to behave pretty well, right? You're probably going to say pretty much the right things all the time. Maybe not, but and if you do, you won't be afraid to apologize, right? Your actions will probably be, oh, there's my daughter. So instead of, maybe like studying and pushing on yourself to be, to know everything about Buddhism and go down the list of all the Eightfold Path and everything like that. We're having fun today, aren't we? Come here. Right? Just call up this voice, the one who, okay, stop. Bye. Just, in your meditation, have a seat, call this voice, the one who doesn't need to know. You can always go back to the one who needs to know later when you do need to know stuff. But I love your point, Paul, about the amount of creativity that can happen in this space, because there's no limits. And things, at the beginning, I talked about mind being this open sky and the clouds coming through. Those clouds are still going to come through in this place, don't they? It's not, you're not blank. You're just the one who doesn't need to know. So those clouds can come through, those thoughts can come through, those creative ideas can come through, and unlimited by anything. Well, if there's no other comments or questions, I just want to thank everybody for coming and really enjoy our classes together. And we'll see you next week. Have a great day.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.